What's up, you wonderful Sifus? It's Midnight Lights. This is the cause, bringing you another one of my boss guides, my death, no sweat, no cheese guide. This one is for Sean, the fighter, who definitely was very tough, tougher than Fajar. But still, once you got his moves, and this will give you everything you need to do to scout his moves and to counter all of them very effectively, without dying, without breaking a sweat, and without cheating the game. So let's get into it. Is the outline for this guide. We're going to start with basic approach and tips, then we're going to scout every single one of his moves, phase 1 and phase 2, and how to counter them. And when you do counter them, the next section is the best counter combos I've found to maximize damage. We're going to go over where to get weapons and how they can help you against Sean. I'll go over the best shrine and skill upgrades for Sean specifically, and then I'm going to go over a how to spare guide for Sean. I know that's been really difficult for folks to get. You end up killing him or not even getting to that point, so this guide will help with that. And then at the end is a full video where I don't die. I also do it with no skill or shrine upgrades. So let's start with approach and tips. This is just generally how to approach Sean and beat him. So number 1, don't be the aggressor. So what I mean by this is, of course, don't button mash. You really want to learn your combos, but mostly it's like you want to wait for his attack, see if you recognize it so you can avoid it the last moment, and then you want to counter. So you'll find that if you're the aggressor, he'll actually perfect parry you and counter you, and you'll kind of take a lot of damage. So don't be the aggressor, respond to his attacks. And the best thing to do is to learn his attacks. So the first 3 or 4 times you go up against Sean or any boss, just know you're probably going to die a lot, probably totally die, like run out of lives. And you're doing that because that whole time you're getting his timing, figuring out when you can perfect parry, when you can get an avoid. And then as you scout his moves, you're going to time your avoid on his final combo move. So that last move of a combo, if you avoid it the right time, it opens up what I call like a vulnerability window in which you can counter. And when you counter, you want to counter with a combo that knocks him on his butt, and then you want to ground and pound. So we're going to go over all of that with you, but generally that's the best approach. Scout to get his timing, avoid that last move in his combo at the right time, and then counter with a combo of your own that knocks him on his butt. So the best thing to do with all of this in mind is to get a rhythm, where after he combos you, you're avoiding and parrying and avoiding that last one, taking him down, ground and pounding, and then backing away and getting ready for the next move. That's what I mean by rhythm. You also want to use your focus early and often, y'all. So what I mean by that is you should go in with the full focus meter, you should use it right away, and then as soon as it builds up, use it again. It's just a great way to break up his combat, to do a lot of damage, because you can combo off of a focus move. Next is block early. So anytime, particularly early when you're scouting and getting his combos down, you just want to block those first 2 or 3 moves. Most of his combos are 2 or 3 phases. So it's just good to be holding guard for that time, particularly early on, and then see if you recognize the combo enough to then be able to get the timing of the last phase of his combo. And if you don't recognize, you can just keep blocking or parrying, and I'll get into what's the difference a little bit later. One thing that's kind of cool about Sean, particularly in phase 1, he's very predictable. He doesn't have a lot of moves. He does the same thing every time. It's just like you gotta know what he's doing in order to really get the jump on him. So that's one good thing about Sean. He's predictable, but he is tougher on your structure than Fajar. So yes, while I am saying you're gonna guard if you don't recognize, and potentially guard a lot or block by holding L1, he is gonna do a lot of damage on your structure, particularly with the last move of every one of his combos. So you want to get good at avoiding that last move. Also, Sean has and it's something about this particular arena, has a really good way of getting you cornered, and then that's when the camera angle is a little tough. So you definitely want to try and stay in the middle. So part of your rhythm after you knock him down, ground and pound, is get back out into the middle where you can see him. All right, let's get into phase 1 scouting Sean's moves. Like I said before, Sean's pretty predictable, particularly in phase 1, and these are all the phase 1 moves that he does. So before every combo, almost entirely 100% of the time, he's going to close the distance between the two of you in one of 3 ways, either by like a shoulder charge, a straight ahead stab that does a little more damage, and then he'll also sometimes swing his staff at you to close the distance. So he's always going to do that. Every combo starts with that. So just know that, because that can help you avoid left or right, or again, that means you just block early on because you know very predictably that he's going to close the distance and then start a three-phase combo. That's Sean's stick. Closing the distance, starting a three-phase combo. So you can see there he closes the distance with a straight ahead stab, and then he's going to move into a 1, 2, 3-phase combo. And then you're going to avoid that last one and counter. Just like Fajar, Sean has two combos that are the most common, the most predictable, and the best for countering. So his first one is this helicopter. So he closes the distance, has a three-phase combo, all of which are high attacks, 1, 2, 3. And what you need to do is, of course, you can block the first two by holding L1, or you can avoid all of them with holding L1 and doing left, right, or duck, which is down, and that will do just fine. So that's his first one, that helicopter three-phase combo, including, well, 4 if you include closing the distance. So what you want to do is avoid all 3, again, which is holding L1 down, left, or right. Any of those will do in terms of avoiding this. And when you avoid that last one, it'll open up that window for you to counter that vulnerability window. So the other thing you can do is parry the first two and avoid the third. And we'll talk more about parrying. It's critical to sparing the boss. Parrying is critical to sparing, yes. But parrying is when he swings, you hit L1 at just as it hits, and it breaks his structure when you do that. So those first two, maybe you're hitting L1 right as it hits, and when you do that, it'll help break down his structure, and then you duck or avoid left or right on the last one, and that opens up the vulnerability window. So again, the best way to deal with the helicopter is to avoid all 3 or parry the first 2 and avoid the third. All right, let's move into the shredder attack. Also a 3 or 4 phase attack, right? The first phase is closing the distance. The second phase, and I call it a shredder because it's horizontal and a vertical attack. So you can see a vertical, horizontal, and vertical. So let's watch it again here in slow-mo. He's going to close the distance, like he always does with his shoulder that time. Vertical, horizontal, vertical. Avoid the last one and punish. The best thing to do is to avoid all 3 of the vertical horizontals in the shredder. 1, 2, 3. And then you can punish him. You can also parry the first 2 by hitting L1 as soon as it hits, as soon as those 2 hit, and then avoid. I just found it was a little easier, particularly with this one over the helicopter, to not try and parry, but to just avoid all 3. And again, I'll go through the timing on this last one. So here he comes, closing the distance, and then 1, 2, 3. So there's a little delay to perfect dodge or avoid the third one. Like I said, you kind of want to get to a rhythm where after your combo and you knock him down and ground and pound, you kind of get away. But sometimes you'll find you're a little eager going after him, and when you do that, he does kind of have a counter and a little 2Z combo, so let's see it in slow-mo here. So I'm going after him, but then he dodges me, and then it's 1, 2. That's sort of his counter combo, so look out for that. Alright, we've scouted all his phase 1 moves, moving on to phase 2, and a lot of them are similar, which again gets to his predictability, but they all get a little more complicated. So we've still got the helicopter. It's the most common that he does, or very common, and you can still guard and parry the same way. You want to parry the first 2 and avoid the third, or avoid all 3. So I'll show you one more time here, just with all the fire going on. Closes the distance, and then phase 1, 2, 3, and that's me avoiding all 3. Again, that helps me a lot, but when you want to spare him, it can be good to parry or press L1 right when it lands. Alright, here's the helicopter plus. Close the distance, and then he does 2 attacks and 3 attacks. So it's sort of a 5-phase, almost like a 6-phase combo. So let's look at it here in slow-mo. Alright, he just closed the distance. Now he's going to do a vertical attack, a horizontal attack, then he backs up, and then he does the helicopter. So if you can guard those first 2, or even parry them, and then you know the helicopter is coming, so you can avoid all 3 of those. 1, 2, 3. and then you can punish him. But you just got to avoid that third one in the helicopter and you're good. All right, next is the Shredder, and then the Shredder Plus. So he does the Shredder in this to the vertical, horizontal, vertical attack, which you just saw. We'll see again here. 1, 2, 3. But then the plus is that stomp at the end. Now that stomp, he'll do it 3 or 4 times, particularly as his life gets low. He'll just stomp over and over if he's landing it. So you want to try to, he's going to close the distance, then you want to parry the first 2 or avoid all 3. And if you avoid this last horizontal attack like I do there, he won't get that stomp down. So that's the best thing to do. Just in like phase 1, he has this stab move. There it is, which mostly is used to close down the distance. He'll bring it out at different points. He winds up a little bit so you can identify it, but just so you know it's there. So another way he closes the distance, kind of, or starts a combo is with a sweep in this second phase, and it is by far and away the hardest attack, and why you need to start particularly early on guarding all of his attack, holding L1 at the beginning of any combo. So you'll see it here. Instead of shouldering or stabbing to close the distance, he'll use a sweep, and you just want to be holding L1. And he always follows up the sweep with the Shredder attack, those vertical and horizontal attacks. So you can anticipate it. You know after the sweep, the Shredder's coming. And just like before, with the Shredder, if you don't do a perfect avoid on the last one, he's going to start doing that stomp attack at the end. I avoided perfectly on that one, but typically if you don't, he will start doing those stomp attacks. So here it comes again. Although he didn't close the distance with it that time. He just started with a sweep, all of the Shredder attack, and then I didn't perfect dodge, so he'll start those stomps. But if you perfect avoid, I didn't mean dodge before, I meant avoid. If you perfect avoid the stomp, it'll also open up a vulnerability window. So there it is. You can also raise your foot or kind of block or do an avoid for the sweep move, and you can see he winds up quite a bit. So when you get his timing down really well, you can press up on the joystick while you're holding L1 on PS5, and you can see he winds up. He gives you, I know this is slow-mo, but he does give you a pretty good indication. So when you're up against Sean for like the 5th or 6th time, you're going to start seeing that. So let's move on to one way you can recover. The ground counter is an unlockable skill that works every time he sweeps you, legit every time. So if he does land the sweep, you can press L1 to counter or roll away like you saw me do just there with R2. So just like in phase 1, if your combo goes too long or you're too aggressive, he'll counter you, and he does it with this vertical attack and then straight away stab just like that. So let's see it in slow-mo. Again, he'll perfect parry me, deflect here. Boom, there's a perfect parry. Then he backs up, kind of closes the distance with this overhead attack and then straight forward. It just happens kind of rarely, so particularly if you're managing your combos well. So that's why I just say generally it's better to manage your combos and get in a good rhythm, and then you don't have to worry about this kind of rare, more unpredictable attack that's his counter. Right, now we're talking about those best combos. You open the vulnerability window, and then what do you counter with? What attacks do you use to maximize damage? So the first 2 combos I'm going to show you are ones you can use without any skill upgrades or shrine upgrades or anything. So the first one is any combination of light and heavy, 2 attack, and then a sweep, and then a beat down. So what I typically do is square triangle. You'll see me do it here. Square, triangle, up, down, triangle, to sweep, and then hold circle for the beatdown. So that attack you can do without any skill upgrades. It consistently will do it. It's not too many combos. He won't parry it. It's just enough for his vulnerability window. So quite similar to that is doing basically the same thing, but this time with a staff. So when you have a staff in this against Sean, which I definitely recommend, is you can do a 2 attack and then sweep down, beat down. So typically I do square triangle again, which you'll see me do here. Perfect avoid, square triangle, and then hit triangle again and it'll sweep him. You don't have to do up, down, or anything. That third phase of your combo triangle will sweep him down, square triangle, triangle, and then hold circle for the beatdown, and you got him. Those 2 you can do without any skill upgrades, so very consistent and very doable. This is always one of my go-tos because I just kind of like the timing of it and because it's very satisfying to kick someone in the face. So this is the hook kick combo. We're going to do light, heavy, a brief pause, and then heavy. So I'll talk through it here. Avoid that last swipe, square, triangle, wait a split second, triangle, hook kick, and then hold circle for the ground and pound. So this combo requires unlocking the hook kick skill, and this next one involves unlocking the chase trip kick skill. And for this one, what you want to do is a palm strike, which is down up square, and then as soon as you land that, you're going to press triangle, and that'll trigger the chasing trip kick, which knocks him on his butt, and you can ground and pound by holding circle. So here it comes in slow-mo. Closes the distance, or no, just a 3 helicopter attack. Avoid that last one. Down up square was that first attack that pushed him away, and then you press triangle right away. There can't be a delay, and then that will you'll run after him, sweep him down, then you hold circle for the ground and pound. One important thing to note about bosses too is that you're going to find these semi-stun moments where you're going to hear this chime. You might have just heard it. So I'm going to be quiet in this next one so you can hear the chime. So what that chime means is you kind of trigger this semi-stun. It's not a full stun, he doesn't like keel over, but it gives you a window to basically get 2 combos, 2-3 move combos in, which you don't get to do on a perfect avoid without triggering that chime or semi-stun. Weapons on this for Sean are quite simple. You may come in with a staff from the mini boss from earlier, but you don't need to. There's right when you walk in on the left, there are staffs, and then there's also some on the right. So there are plenty of staffs in here for you to find and use. So those are locations. Now in terms of tips, you can get a really important thing to do is when you're in phase 1 and you're seeing Sean's life go down, you want to like throw a staff at him and then go get a fresh staff. I could have even got one later than I did in this one, but you want to go into phase 2 with a fresh staff because it'll be so important for being able to do a lot of good parrying and blocking. Also, you can start with an environmental mastery start. That's when you just basically run over to all of those staffs, and when he comes over to you, just keep hitting R1 and it'll throw staff after staff at him and you'll do some damage that way. Alright, recommended upgrades for Sean, and you can see what's going to happen here for shrine upgrades and skill unlocks is I'll put 1, 2, or 3 asterisks next to them. 3 being like this one is very important to beating Sean, and 1 being this is important, more important than all of the other stuff with no asterisks, but certainly not critical. Okay, so let's start with the 2 asterisks, 1 for Sean, which is focus regain. This means every time you avoid, you gain more focus, which then you can use and fill that bar up faster to use against him. Next is structure regain. He does do more damage to your structure, so this is every time you avoid or perfect parry, you're going to get more structure for yourself, which can be so helpful, particularly in scouting. Weapon durability is pretty good. I'm like, do I need to put this on? It's just good because you can use a staff a lot in this, which can be helpful. Quite similarly, it's sort of the same with weapon proficiency. It's just going to do more damage when you use your staff, which can be good when you need to beat him, but not so good when you need to spare him. Alright, skill unlocked, spin hook kick. This is just one of the easiest, fastest, most efficient ways to knock Sean down or any boss down, and then move on with your ground and pound, which does good structure damage and damage. Same with chasing trip kick, is just a good part. If you do the palm strike to the chasing trip kick, it's a great combo you can do very quickly. It almost guaranteed is not going to be too long for Sean to avoid or parry it, so you can see it here. It's just on that 3rd swing, you perfect avoid, palm strike, press triangle for the chasing trip kick, knocks him down, you ground and pound. Those 2 have 2 stars because I think they're great for combos that are very likely to knock him down. Ground counter, I only put 1 star on here, although it's great because every time he sweeps you in that 2nd phase, you can ground counter him like without fail, which you can see here. But that said, it's not imperative to beating him. And we have arrived at the How to Spare Sean walkthrough. So this is everything you need to know to spare Sean, to beat him without completely draining his life. And you can really use this for any boss, but we're going to talk about Sean specifically. So first, the basics of actually like what is breaking someone's structure and how do you do it. So very basically, it's when you break a boss's structure twice without draining his life completely or knocking him out. And when you do it the 2nd time, you don't press square triangle, you look for that prompt that says spare, which is left on the D-pad for PlayStation 5. Now, you're going to be monitoring if you're doing a good job of breaking his structure without draining his life on the bars up here. So you can see I just broke his structure, which is the top bar, but the low bar, you want to keep something there because that's his life. So that's really it. That's the number one thing you need to know, is just how to spare a boss, which is breaking their structure twice without draining their life, aka knocking them out. Next tip, it's important to keep in mind that your lowest age when you go into a hideout saves. So and your sparing each boss is what you need to do to get the true ending of the game, or the best ending of the game, and that permanently saves too. So you only have to do it once. And when you go to the hideout, you'll still be at your youngest age. So it's okay to die. Don't worry so much about sparing Sean or any other boss at a very young age. You just have to, it's sort of the business end of things. You just have to get the spare so you have it. So then when you spare Yang at the end, you get that best ending or true ending. Right, so that's like all of the orientation to breaking structure. Now let's actually talk about the different things you can do to help break boss's structure. And there are a few things, and one the game doesn't tell you that's so important that you know, so we'll go over that in detail for sure. So the things that damage structure are doing damage, but you want to take it easy with that because you don't want to drain their whole life. Also, hitting them while they're blocking. Parrying, which is just hitting L1 when a hit of theirs lands, and then deflecting is perfect parrying, or hitting L1 right when a particular attack lands, and then it opens up a vulnerability window. And tell me in the comments if you found any way to perfect parry any of Sean's attacks, because I wasn't able to. So definitely hit me up in the comments if you were able to do that. So in Sifu, there's deflecting or perfect parrying, and I haven't figured out a way to do that on any of Sean's moves, but this is what it looks like with Fajar, where you press L1 at just the right moment, and it does this perfect parry, opens up a vulnerability window, and then that does a ton of structure damage. But the other thing you can do is parrying, which is still hitting L1 right when an attack lands on you, but it won't perfect parry, but it will damage their structure. So we'll watch it a couple times here. So you can see as he helicopters me, I press L1, and you can see that bar on the top just increase a little. Now this is the most important thing you need to know for breaking boss's structure without draining their life, because the other strategies we're going to go through drain their life and damage their structure, but parrying is the one thing you can do that will damage their structure without doing damage to them, which is so critical to being able to spare them. Another quick little tip here is just doing light attack combos and no ground and pounds to limit the amount of damage you're doing when you are landing attacks during those vulnerability windows, because square will do a nice little bit of damage to their structure, but not a ton of damage to their life. Again, that's the key to sparing any boss. So those light attack combos, square, 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 is plenty. Next is a quick light attack after picking him up from a ground and pound. So you see that in a few videos here where I pick him up and then I just sneak in a couple of moves. I get a few more in on that one. But I found that this did some structure damage because he's always blocking after you pick him up, but you can still get in a couple. It's a little risky, but I found that helped. It's not necessary, but it will help you get to spare a little bit faster. You can only do maybe 2 or 3 little square attacks. He'll do a little damage to structure and he'll be guarding, so that can help too. So I hope that helped you think about how to spare Sean. Now we're going to move on to our next section, which is a full video of me beating Sean, not sparing him, just it's draining his whole life, but I'm doing it with no upgrades, no shrine upgrades, and no unlocks, and I'll just do some commentary to kind of walk through and apply some of what we've gone through so far. So this is a full uncut video of me defeating Sean using everything we've talked to up to this point, and I'm doing it without any skill upgrades or shrine upgrades, skill unlocks or shrine upgrades, because yeah, I want to show what's possible, show that you don't need all of those skill upgrades or shrine upgrades to be able to beat Sean. It's just about the scouting, the countering, and everything we've talked about so far. So you can see I'm looking for those opportunities to avoid the final phase of his attack, and then I'm countering with something that will do a ground and pound, something that'll get him to the ground. So with the staff, remember that square, triangle, triangle. That last triangle button will include a sweep. So you can see his helicopter attack. I avoid on the third part of that phase, figure out a combo to to get him to the ground, and then ground and pound him. Now I'm going to go get another staff there because, again, it just helps with, it doesn't break when you block. I think it helps you not do quite as much damage to your structure. So I definitely encourage it. Now, if you do lose your staff, sometimes I'll just do a one light attack and then a sweep to then be able to go and get it. So again, that was that helicopter attack. Just avoid on that last one. Block the first two, avoid on the last phase of the helicopter attack, and you'll get a vulnerability window every time. That was square, triangle, triangle, which again was a sweep to a ground and pound. And yes, I have used my focus once already, which don't forget to do that. As soon as focus bar builds up all the way, you want to use that right away. Alright, this was a mistake. I didn't sweep him and went to go get my staff, and he punished me for it. He's very quick and he closes distance very quickly. Remember, we're always anticipating his first move of any combo is to close distance. Helicopter attack, square, triangle, triangle, and that's the bread and butter. He does the helicopter attack quite a bit, so that's good. I don't know if we've seen a shredder attack yet. Here it is. So that's the vertical or horizontal, vertical, horizontal attack that you can avoid with back, left, right. You can duck left or right. All of it's good for that. And that's phase one down. And remember, oh, well, no, I'm going to go get a new staff before the end of phase one so that I go into phase two with a fresh staff. Gotta have that fresh staff, baby. Straight away attack after one move. Again, he usually uses that to close down distance. Shredder attack, avoid on the last one. Vulnerability window and punish. Helicopter attack, avoid on the last one. The last phase of the combo. Boom, vulnerability window and capitalize.
You're almost.
Yep, so I'm just going to skip that to save some time. You can see he's more aggressive here. He's coming at you, but it's still the same thing. His big attack is to close the distance. There's a helicopter. I'm going to use a focus to get a little ahead of him here. And then, yeah, sometimes to impact his structure a little faster, I'll throw in a couple attacks after I pick him up from a ground and pound. He seems to, he'll guard those so it won't do damage to his life, but will to his structure. So, yeah, that's the Shredder plus attack, right? He'll do a two-phase combo to close the distance and then a full Shredder combo, and then sometimes he'll do stomps after that. You just want to always be avoiding perfectly on the third phase, that third vertical attack of the Shredder, and it'll prevent him from doing those stomps. But the bread and butter is always the helicopter one. When he does that, you know you're in a good place. So here's the Shredder. I didn't avoid very well on the last one, and there's the sweep. So remember, the sweep is a closing down distance move typically. So if you block it, he'll go right into a Shredder. And remember too, at the end of Shredders in phase 2 is typically a big horizontal stomp, vertical stomp attack. There's the helicopter, avoid on the last phase of its combo and punish. There, well, it looked like I perfectly avoided the Shredder attack on that one, but he still kept comboing. So that's what I'm saying, you're just going to get so good with his timing, but also holding guard or block when you're not sure what's going on to prevent damage and get reoriented. So there's the stomp after the Shredder attack, which if you avoid that, it'll also send it to a vulnerability window, and sometimes he'll do like 3 of those stomp attacks. I think I'm trying to spare him here, which is why I'm not doing too many combos that sweep him to the ground when I get the perfect avoid. There's that helicopter, love to see it. So I swept him there, ground and pound. So that was just square triangle and then up down triangle. And yeah, anytime that sweep comes, this is why you're always holding L1 when he starts a combo, because that sweep will sneak up on you so hard. Close the distance, Shredder, oh, that's the sort of helicopter plus. He'll close the distance with 2 attacks and then do the helicopter. So that's what you can do when you get swept. You can R2 to get away, but if you've unlocked the ground counter, you can press L1 and it works every time with him, and it'll knock him to the ground. So there's another stomp. My perfect avoid was able to get a couple hits in. Roll away when he sweeps you. So it's sweep, Shredder, and then those stomp attacks. So that's the helicopter plus 2 attacks to close distance. And then the helicopter, see if I end him with the focus. And there you go. That's it. That's the full video. I know it's a lot. Hopefully you watched everything up until this point. But I have other boss videos you can check out to help you be able to not just beat these bosses without dying yourself with no sweat and no cheating the game or cheesing the game. But that's it. That's my no death, no sweat, no cheese guide to Sean. I hope you liked it. It's really fun to make these videos. Let me know in the comments, like, what are you looking for? What other videos do you need help with? This game is quite challenging. So don't forget to find me on Twitter at Midnite Lights. You can see Midnite spelled differently. I'm also on Instagram at Midnite Lights, where I post some of my combat gameplay videos. And yeah, check out some of my other videos here. And remember that as soon as I start making money and hit 1,000 subscribers, I'm going to donate 50% of whatever I make at any point to charity. So thanks. Again, I'm the Cause with Midnite Lights. Click on any of these other videos to check out some of my other guides and in-depth guides to Sifu. And take care, y'all.